Well, cool. Thanks, everybody. Excited to be here. This is the first, we'll go ahead and kick off here. This is first in a series that we're kickstarting, and this is intentionally Friday, end of week, because this really fits in with the theme. And I'll tell you the way this kind of came about, we're dubbing this series Champions Corner, um, if you will. We'll see if it sticks 3 episodes in, but for now, we're going Champions Corner. And the sort of ideology behind this is I've been really fortunate to have just hundreds of conversations with customer-centric marketing, go-to-market leaders over the past year plus as we've been um, building Champion out. And so many of those occasions, it's just been thinking like, wow, this should be some sort of package, content, a conversation, a fireside chat, a webinar, something. And there's just so many learnings that have been embedded in this, and so much that comes out of sort of the formal topic and the focus, but also the informal conversation style. And so that's really the focus of this is having incredible guests and speakers that we can learn from and interview and really dive deep on specific topics, while simultaneously kind of keeping it as a informal chat and conversation, which we think lends itself well to sort of the Friday afternoon. It's 2 p.m. Let's not like go through a formal presentation, but let's just like transition it into the weekend from there. Um, and so as we go through this, just as kind of a ground rules for the time, I think we've got a full hour and the time. We'll really try to keep this around 30, 35 minutes or so. And then if it goes beyond, we'll probably cut the recording and then we can continue to chat from there. And then second, we do want to keep this very, very, very conversational. And so we've got a great topic, we've got a great guest, we've got questions lined up, but also what's important is we bridge the gap between maybe what's, on a typical webinar, you get presented stuff, and then does that sort of fit the question marks and is the connective tissue there between some of the challenges I might be going through personally. And so we want to be able to build that connective tissue. Best way to be able to do that is to keep it insanely interactive. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout, and I'll really just be moderating this conversation as a whole. That block of stuff right there is the most you're going to hear out of me today, outside of a few questions that I prompt. And so I want to be able to transition this and say I'm super thrilled that our first guest on this series is Kristen Smith. Um, Kristen is the global director of customer marketing at Aircall. And Kristen and I were talking, on and off over the past number of months. And Kristen is just an incredibly strategic customer marketing leader and marketing leader as a whole, and an incredibly customer-centric one as well. And I think the story that she's shared with me and that we've talked through, and one something Kristen's just done incredibly well, is sort of avoiding this trap on how customer marketing can become a very reactive role and really pushing towards the strategic vision of earning a seat at the revenue table and really driving customer marketing to make impact across the full organization. So I'll stop there. Kristen, really thrilled to have you on. Really thrilled that you are guest number one on this series.
No pressure.
And maybe I'll just hand it off to you for a quick or sort of an introduction and background on yourself.
Yeah, for sure. No pressure at all being the I can't wait to be sitting in the other seat for the next one. But I think I mean I recognize a lot of faces on the webinar or on the Zoom. I've been in customer marketing for quite a bit. If I'm going like way back to my background, I started out actually in CPG and healthcare marketing, which is how I got into SaaS. So I joined Marketo as a healthcare vertical product marketer. And back in 2016, when we brought in a new CEO at Marketo, one of the first things he said was, I want underneath of corporate marketing, I want customer marketing and customer advocacy. I want partner marketing and I want employee advocacy. So I was coming back from a maternity leave and was like, I'll do that, and jumped into doing and leading this employee advocacy and employee engagement function. And because it was sitting within like in corporate marketing and next to customer marketing, we looked at just how many parallels there are between the customer journey and an employee journey, and how do you leverage those same types of tools for advocacy. So back in like 2017, we used Influitive for both the Purple Select program as well as the Marketo employee. It was, I think, called Marketo Life program. But from there, I went on to lead the people engagement and an experience team in HR, which was like a place as a like career marketer I like never thought that I'd be. And I stayed there until the Adobe acquisition. And from there, I kind of got into this like repeat pattern of building customer marketing functions and community functions at Peakon, which was acquired by Workday, and then at Gainsight, at Hopin, where I also led corporate marketing, and then most recently at Aircall. And each one of those like companies and orgs have been slightly different, which I'm sure like that probably resonates with everyone on the call, which is like customer marketing is so unique based off of what your business model is, what your customer success model looks like, and it's one of the things I really love and like keep gravitating back to this space is the opportunity to shape out functions and teams based off of what does that company need? What does that business need? And where can you add that absolute most value?
Fantastic. Thanks, Kristen. Maybe kind of just leading directly into it here. Let's just start with like the sort of subject line or the title of the webinar or the series here, which is having a seat at the revenue table, and kind of curious what that looks like for you and what that looks like for you at Aircall and how you kind of got into that position as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, quite like literally and tactically, like what that means for us is that customer marketing has a dedicated airspace at the go-to-market leadership team meetings and at our strategic leadership updates. And then we have a weekly marketing performance update that we do with our CEO. Prior to, I'd say about a year ago, we did not have space within those conversations. We were not on the invites. Like if you're just getting down to like the nitty gritty, like we were not on the invites. We did not have the slide. And it takes a bit of like, for better or worse, like you're there and you're in front of the CFO and you're in front of the CEO. But I think it's so much more dangerous if people do not know what you're doing and do not know the impact of what you're driving for the business. So I really advocated to have that invite, to have that space for us to be able to say, here's how we're building out an expansion marketing like motion that had never been done before and what the results of it are, and where we're experimenting also, like because it's not always okay, we knocked this one out of the park. Sometimes the conversation is we tried something, it didn't work.
How did you actually like, and just to dive a little bit deeper there, a thought just triggered in my mind and like a painful memory just triggered in my mind. I did not come up through customer marketing. I came up through demand gen earlier in my career, but I remember there was a demand gen meeting between a number of different folks, and I wasn't invited to that meeting. There was a meeting about what I owned, but the topic was without me. And I remember thinking at that moment, that can't happen anymore. And like, how do I get into that room and in that conversation? Like leading up in that space from when you first started to where you're a central part of that conversation and meeting. Like what sort of was the magic to start getting that to happen? Was it really sitting down one-on-one with leaders to show the impact? Was it just getting into the room and presenting something? Curious how you actually like kind of tangibly made that happen.
Oh man, there were multiple wedges that I forced kind of the door open in. So I think one of them was just like taking the opportunity of like the moment in time, of this time last year we were launching the very first add-on product for
Mm,
Aircall. So it was the Aircall AI product, and it was like kind of the game changer for shifting the way that the team was operating before, which was like very much an intake of uh, this team wants to send a customer communication or like a customer email. And it was almost just the processing of comms that other teams wanted to send. And being having this product launch, it gave the opportunity to say, hey, we're not going to just take in from the different teams. We're actually going to take in that what all of the details of this product launch and come up with our own plan. And
Mm.
because that plan had targets associated with it, because
Yeah,
it was a commercial monetized add-on, we were able to then like those, it slowly started to we were doing business updates on this launch and the revenue impact of the launch, and customer marketing was a big piece of that
right.
launch puzzle. So that was kind of one door open. um I think the other was just at the point in time we were bringing in brand new leadership and building those relationships. So we brought in an entirely new C-suite. And with that came new operating principles and making sure that the C-suite knew exactly what we were doing so that when they were say establishing, okay, we have a weekly go-to-market leaders meeting. Here are all the leaders of each of the business units that need to be reporting out. And then the kind of the last was on like alliances. So it's like making sure that like somebody else is there saying, hey, this person needs to be in the room.
Yeah,
For me, that and it's just this is kind of a principle that I really believe in general, is like that relationship with customer success,
yeah,
as well as like the CRO. So we have a chief sales officer, and actually customer success rolls up underneath of our chief sales officer. So my relationship with our VP of customer success, like she makes sure that things do not happen without me in the room. And she's very vocal on my behalf of like, if I'm not there, it's, hey, Kristen needs to be part of this conversation.
yeah. That's fantastic. So a lot around targets and accountabilities and metrics, the relationships built up around alliances, and then sort of looking for those key strategic initiatives that are happening internally that you can make sure that the customer marketing team is a core part of as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got kind of this like framework that I've built, and like the foundational piece of it is customer marketing should be proactively incorporated into every single go-to-market plan, every launch, every initiative. And that's either from the fact that you bring in customer voice or customer proof into every single campaign, or you're thinking about them as an audience. I've had a lot of experiences where we've done these launches or we've done big campaigns and customers are just like completely forgotten about. And it's like that this is where like most of our revenue is coming from. And we've totally forgotten about even sending them a separate message or announcement that is actually relevant to them.
Yeah, yeah, it's fantastic. Um, to maybe double click on the targets and accountabilities, and I know you had shared with me on a prior call some of the metrics that you were focusing on. And I think the story around how you transition sort of the metrics of the department that maybe were inherited or that were there in place and into very quantitative, very business impact metrics is really fascinating. So, could you perhaps dive into a little bit on the metrics that you focus most on, and kind of that transitional story behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel pretty grateful that like I've had a lot of autonomy in being able to say these are the areas that this team is going to be focusing on. And I mean, a lot of like how that's come about has been in looking at the things that don't quite work, and providing solutions and recommendations around like how do we make this better. But I've had a lot of kind of freedom to be able to say, here's how we're going to measure the team. Here's the ways that we're going to focus. And a kind of core principle that I just like to apply to like building my teams in general is actually looking completely across the life cycle. So not staying down in the loyalty or the advocacy piece of the journey, but how do we have either a team resource or a guiding metric on each stage. So for Aircall, where we landed was we want to impact new business demos. And the way that we support that is we have a lot of businesses where we maybe have one use case. We might have one part of the business. We might have one region. We might have one sister company. How do we break into use our existing relationships to break into the other areas of the organization, and drive some demos within that, and then also has been win backs.
Mm.
So we look a lot at our churn customers as well, and how do we re-engage them and bring them back, have them be boomerangs. We see quite a lot of that. So there's these kind of audiences that we've started building programs around, and the metric for measuring that is, can we get them on a demo? Can we get them re-engaged in a new business conversation with us and bring them back, or land and expand within the account? The other is that impacts new business is on referrals. So we own a referrals program. I kind of put this one in the bucket of like, we're still trying to figure it out. The kind of the tools and the process are just like not great. I think also like referral programs in general, and I would love to, if anybody's got like really great experience in this, I'd love to hear it. But I've kind of always struggled at like that higher ticket B2B SaaS with referrals, when and like what's the right incentive to be able to get that. And the other kind of component of that is like getting sellers to also adapt to a program. So I think sellers are like they're really opportunistic, and they're great about like, okay, I just closed this deal. Let me ask them right then and there, do they have somebody else that we can refer them to? That usually is happening, and the customer's not incentivized for it, and it's kind of happening like in the dark. So how do we make sure that like we use that also to like build the relationship? So work in progress, but we have generated quite a lot of revenue, new business revenue and pipeline coming from our referrals program. And then I think no surprise to this conversation is on expansion. So we have signed up for, and I can kind of talk about like what we mean with leads.
Mm.
So we kind of just categorize them as like customer marketing leads, but we look at high intent, and we really like craft all of our programs to optimize for the explicit hand raising. I want this now. So we look at both the lead generation as well as the opportunity conversion. And that's a shared metric that we have with customer success, that they've committed to of we're going to generate this amount of pipeline for you, these amount of leads. They're going to be high intent. Your team has a responsibility to convert them at this percentage. So it's very much we both report on that, on both of those metrics. And then last is around reviews. So and our review rankings and placements, because I mean we know obviously that's kind of it's a great indicator of advocacy, but then also so useful pulling it back into the top of the funnel.
So you've got three main branches. You've got this new business arm. It's um excuse me, new business demo. It's heavily driven around winbacks, churn customers, and referrals is something that's really helped to drive results there. You've got this expansion element, and really signing up for a number. And what I think is fascinating there is, sounds like you're really driving pipeline in a similar manner to how a, a team is goal off of pipeline for a new business, for that
Yep.
matter. And then
And
third is on
that was
reviews.
important too, like the fact that our customer success managers are quota carrying and they sit underneath of the chief sales officer. Like that was one of the connective things that like was light bulbs for him, was let's actually build this function and build these relationships in the same vein of DG, building the relationship and building pipeline for AEs. Like it just made so much sense to him when we pitched it that way. He's like, okay, yeah, immediately, like I get it and I see the value, and like I'm totally bought in to this. So sorry, I
No,
cut you,
that's great.
but that was, and Fred,
Yeah,
that was a
yeah.
good thing to do with him.
Well, it's fascinating because so much attention can get put on just the new business pipeline, if we're just talking pipeline numbers, and it's so easy. It's just an easy extension of one's thought to say like, yeah, we should have a similar metric for expansion opportunities, expansion revenue, and similar goals for how we think about a team driving pipeline for that. What were some of the key elements within that expansion? Because expansion is a big sort of topic in the room here. But within that and having the targets, what were some of the most successful, whether it's campaigns, strategies, tactics that you leverage to really start to drive that pipeline as well? And maybe within that, how were you working with success team overall with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like, so I'll take the last piece of that first.
Mhm.
We So with our VP of customer success, they've got their revenue targets, and their revenue targets for the CSMs are broken down by incremental add-on. So what we did was we worked together and so their operations team said, here's what the CSMs in each one of the regions actually need to deliver. And we came to an agreement on backing into how much pipeline does customer marketing need to generate in order to cover a percentage of their expansion goals. So I think like with post sales, it's just like not as straightforward in general, like as it is with AEs, which is like
Mhm.
a one in, one out. Like they get one lead in, they're going to sell that versus like with a CSM, there's a multiple different ways that they could actually bring in and hit that goal. Whether it's they're in a renewals conversation, they're saving a downsell on seats, and they're going to make it up by the add-on. So we came to an agreement on what that looks like, our percentage, and then built out our targets. And from there, we built out our campaign strategy. So I think going back to like the title or just even like the headline of this was like, how do we move from this like reactive where we were taking it just like sending on behalf of so many other teams to taking the opportunity of like these add-ons coming and these additional products coming into the online and like into the bag to say, we're going to create a quarterly campaign plan based off of how the CSMs need to be hitting their goals and what their quotas are in whichever region. So we cover many different regions across the globe, and what are the campaigns that are going to build around those and to support those. Candidly, like in the span of a year, we've brought on 4 different incremental products. And we've just been trying out a ton and trying to build up our infrastructure also of like communication tools. So we were oversaturated on email,
Mhm.
brought on Gainsight PX to do in-app engagement so that we could have the data, but then also the engagement arm of it. And have been trying out like LinkedIn in-mails for those cross sells, paid promotion. Like we've done a lot of experimentation on both the audience segmentation and then as well as like the channel distribution. I mean, like no surprise to anybody, we see like in-app conversion is like massive, especially when it's like contextual, it's personalized, like it makes sense to like where the person is in their journey, how they use the product. So we see that like so much, outperform pretty much like everything that we do.
Fantastic.
Kristen,
Yeah,
no,
so go ahead.
I was just gonna say Amanda has her hand raised, but I think you were about
Okay.
to do that. Go ahead.
Of course. Yeah, Amanda, we do see your hand raised there.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. I just wanted to kind of, I guess, overall, it feels like getting that seat at the table is so important. And part of that is having the data to back up why you should be there and how you make those decisions. But for me, I've definitely felt like it's a little like chicken and egg because unfortunately, like I wish I was the person that could get all of the data that I needed, right? But I'm like maxed out at a certain point, and thankfully where I'm at currently, there's a pretty good buy-in to getting more and more customer data into our systems and, enabling me to make decisions based on that data. But maybe you could talk a little bit about like how do you get to that point? How are you bringing people along to say like, yep, I get it and I can help you get to that data, right? Because I think that's like so challenging with demand gen. Everything is so data driven because it's just so easy to get to,
Yeah.
compared to customer.
I mean, this is, I think Jeff had one of his questions was like, what are you still working on? And it's like, it's that, like, it's getting access to the customer data, getting access to how they're interacting with the product, even just like the hygiene around like the account level, the contact level, and then having the operations in place for that tracking. Like all of that has been it's a struggle, like, and it's a daily struggle.
Okay, so I'm not alone. Okay, good.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We've like, there's a lot of things that like, I'm just very honest about what we don't have. And I'm very honest about the fact that like, I do things with Band-Aids and rubber bands, like to some degree. So we have written a business plan or like a kind of a requirement scoping for our opportunity tracking to be and our campaign tracking to be in Salesforce. However, right now everything is in Tatango. So we're doing the best with what we have, and I'm pretty honest and vocal about like this is what we have. These are like the leading indicators of success. So we're able to see explicitly when a customer has said for an add-on, I want access. We're then able to see that that got routed to a CSM to work. We can see the time it took for them to do the outreach back out. We can see that the results of that conversation, and then ultimately was an opportunity created, and was that lead qualified. So no, absolutely not alone. And I think that's the only best piece of advice that I can have is also like educating how different post sales is to new business acquisition. And a lot of the companies that I've been in, like the systems are so sophisticated and they're so like well designed to support new business. And then post sales, like there's just like, oh, you can track renewal. Like, and I mean, that's a bit of what we're experiencing now, which is we have opportunities that get auto created in Salesforce for renewal, and you can't like edit them to add in add-ons. Like it's very, very complicated. So solidarity, like you're not alone.
Awesome. Thanks.
On the topic of alignment, you were mentioning some of the alliances earlier. How much of that challenge from a data standpoint goes back into like the relationship with do you have some bridging of the gap there with the alignment with the CS organization or the data team for that matter? Or like what are some of the ways you best tried to handle that, given that's just an organization-wide sort of challenge behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like our CS org struggles, and like
Uh-huh.
being real open, real candid, like they struggle with it as well, right?
Yeah.
But we work together to build,
Mm.
like, I think the fact that we have the shared vision around how customer marketing will be building pipeline for customer success, in order to hit their targets. So they have operational support in order to do the reporting on their NRR attainment, their expansion, their churn, their contraction. We fold into that reporting to some degree. So we've been able to kind of capitalize on just like the CS ops resource for that. And then co-authoring like what the requirements are, because they're like we're handling the campaign part of the generation, but so much of the success of this hinges on things like lead routing and the management of leads and opportunities for CSMs. One of the kind of rituals that we also have in place is a weekly meeting with the customer success extended leadership team to go through the upcoming campaigns, performance of the campaigns that are in market, and also where do we have CSM pipeline? What's the
Mhm.
status? What has not been worked? What's in progress now? And then where are we against the quarterly targets?
Yeah.
So it's like constant conversations about like where are we at?
Yeah. I have a very, very tactical question here, but really fascinated by this topic. You mentioned the different sort of mediums and communication mediums and PX being one of those, and even investing in like LinkedIn advertising. Are you tracking the similar to how you would for a new business lead source? Are you tracking like lead sources, attribution sources in a similar manner on the expansion side and actually tying back like the ROI on your LinkedIn advertising campaigns from an expansion and pipeline impact
We
standpoint?
are, we are,
That's
and
cool.
like we're doing it in in Google Sheets, but we are like we definitely track, and because that's a bit of like our experimentation, just like methodology is we need to see like what's actually working. We've thrown a lot of things against the wall to kind of just like see what takes off, um, and where do we get like some traction. So we in that like LinkedIn and mail campaign, we used Chili Piper with it as well,
Hmm.
to book the. So if we had this, that was kind of the land and expand motion of like we're trying to break into a separate part of the business use case, or a sister company. We use the existing customer CSM, Chili Piper, to try to get them right back into it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Maybe transitioning over to we had the three sort of targets that you were focused on with expansion, new biz, and reviews. What were some of the things from the new business standpoint? It was kind of like the day you walked in versus today. It really helped transform this into a strategic initiative, strategic role within the organization, strong KPIs, strong metrics. I'm sure there weren't just things that you added on, but also things that you had to do less of. How did you kind of like un prioritize the role as a whole, and like, were there things that you deprioritized along the way? Because I'm sure there's just tons of requests, things that have to get done. They feel like they have to get done, the people internally. How did you kind of handle that, and what did you deprioritize?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that like I think kind of just from a prioritization standpoint that like breaks my heart a little bit, um, not focusing so much on customer content generation. So every team I've kind of ever led, and like also like I spent some time at Laudable, who's in the customer
Mhm.
testimonial space. I have such a deep belief in like in the value of bringing customer voice, and for us not to own that has been really like it's made me very sad, and it's there for me whenever I'm ready to say, hey, give like I've got some resource that we can put against this. But just from spending the last year trying to get this expansion like motion going, and we've had just so many products coming online, like that's where we've really had to sink a lot of the resource. Um, and then looking for like opportunities to plug in different things. So we and Alexi's on the call. We actually worked with Frank Advocacy, on our review program and on our advocacy, like starting to build that up and build that out. So like we had to tap partners externally because it wasn't something and they did an amazing job. Just can't like speak highly enough of our experience with them. We had to outsource, because it just wasn't something that the team was able to kind of completely take on. But we see the value so much, and it helps with our credibility, as well as our like internal relationship with sales to help with making sure that we've got the reviews, they're able to, and the review, there's a strategy in place that crosses all of our markets. So because Aircall has a very heavy European presence, like there are things that don't like not every platform, not every review platform resonates for every market. So we needed to have an approach that was how do we do this globally and add the value to each one of those markets, and to the sales leaders there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Um, Kind of transitioning back into the where we close a little closer to where we started around communications and executive alignment. One thing I've always believed is customer marketing. is one of the most incredible preparatory paths to the CMO that there are. It's one of the few roles where you can make impact across the business from a revenue standpoint. The CMO should be the representative of the customer in that executive room, along with the customer success organization, but really be a representative of the customer. And so as you've really made customer marketing a strategic revenue driving role. How have you sort of thought of that executive alignment piece? And maybe it goes back into the seat at the table that we were talking about earlier, but there anything tactically that you've done to help like create that executive level alignment?
Um, I mean, I think like so at Aircall, I mean, I'm pretty bold in like asking for the time and asking
Mm-hmm.
for the face-to-face meeting with
Yeah.
we brought in an entirely new C-suite. So the time with the new CEO, time with the new chief product officer, time with the chief technology officer, and helping them to understand what we do, like how do we contribute to this business, and then hearing from them what's going to be your priorities, and then filling those gaps, right? Of like, okay, how could you do that better? How could your team go farther with customer voice, with a customer program? How do we plug those things in? So one of the programs that came online was with a new chief product officer coming in. We had, and this is revolutionary, we had an external roadmap for the first time. We had never before that never had an external roadmap. So knowing that information is like, okay, we've got 75% of the customer base, which is low touch. They're in a scaled model. They're not going to have a CSM who's pulling up on a check-in call and showing them what's on the roadmap. Like, we need a scaled program for this. So we launched a customer town hall based off of that like little conversation of like, okay, we've now got an external roadmap. Let's build a quarterly webinar for us to be able to get that in the hands of the lower tier customers that we still want to renew, because they are a huge percentage of our customer base. So with that, and got that CPO as a speaker. He was the keynote speaker for the very first one. It's taking the asking for the time, taking the seeds, and then showing them, okay, if I know what you are focused on, here's how we can like take it tenfold farther.
Yeah, that's really insightful and so key. And it's so interesting. Just like how one conversation with the CPO turns into really understanding his targets. You can just fluidly see how important and critical his alignment with you would be in that scenario of like there's a whole roadmap coming. He's focused on adoption and getting those products cross-sold and upsold, but may not have just the education of the role as a whole and the potential collaboration there. So that's really fascinating. Um, it's budgeting season, planning season.
Yep.
Let's just say a scenario here. You know, you've got to really start aligning for new initiatives for the new year. Like, how do you start building your case, demonstrate the potential ROI? Like, any tips for anybody that's in deep, deep, deep into planning and budgeting mode right now?
Yes. I remember one of the like I wanted to buy a piece of software, and I remember doing a business case and taking so this was at Gainsight, and we had our company OKR slide that had been socialized, and I took the slide, and every single OKR was like, okay, here's how this project supports this. Here's how this project supports this, and tying that in. I think also just having the backup of why are you doing it and what's the cost of not doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think just like the nature of our relationship is like within an org is a lot of the initiatives that we would bring online support another team hitting their goals. So if you want to buy a reference platform, that's to help with sales velocity, and it's to help with closing deals. So get your VP of sales, get your CRO bought in ahead of time, and use them to co-sell with you. I did this actually with PX. Was I co-sold the Stratco on giving me budget for it alongside of our CCO and our VP of CS. So that's not just me. It's not just a customer marketing initiative. This is something that's going to span and help us with business objectives.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Um, there was a slide that you shared with me. I don't remember what was on it, but I guess that's why I get to ask the question.
Let's see if I do.
Which was around the principles that you work with, as operating principles as a whole, as you think of not just customer marketing, but just as a leader within an organization. Would you mind sharing what some of those are?
Oh man, I don't know that I remember this. I don't know. Sounds like me.
I hope I'm connecting the right dots here.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think like the biggest like I guess principle that I operate in is like just like don't create in a silo. Um, Build your plans alongside someone else, or else somebody's going to be telling you what you should be doing. And that's a lot of like what the experience was. So like with us, without customer marketing having a point of view and saying this is our plan, this is what we believe is right for the business, this is what we believe is right for the customer experience, then somebody's going to tell you what that needs to look like. And that's not a position that I like to be in. I like to so building that in, and like the kind of like the ritual that we went through was, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to meet with customer success, I'm going to meet with product marketing, I'm going to meet with global integrated campaigns with content, and I'm going to take in and be a sponge of everything that's available to me, synthesize that and build out what I think the best experience is going to look like for each market and for each of the things that we need to achieve alongside of customer success. So I think that's one, is like
Mhm.
don't build in a silo, which I feel like is a pretty obvious one. Um, and then I think the other one is being like I've had the most growth in my career, and like the most fulfillment in my career when I've taken a step back and looked at like the things that aren't working and tried to come up with a solution and pitched forward, how do we fix this? How do we solve this? And we very much had that experience where I had a burnt out team who was just processing Jira tickets. We had millions of emails going to customers that like weren't connected, weren't really cohesive, making sense. And it's like let's take a step back and like put some engagement principles in place, get some new technology in place so that we can turn this around. And it would have been easy to just like kind of stop there of like, oh, we're just taking in so much from different teams. We don't have the data, we don't have the tools. But we've been able to go so much farther just by like pitching like and asking for the money too, right? Of like the money, the resources, the team members to be able to support it.
Yeah, that's fantastic because regardless of what company or organization it is, like there are challenges beyond just things that exist in, a closet somewhere, challenges, operational data. There's so many problems that just every company has. And sometimes the companies that on the surface seem like they're just up and to the right even, it's just like they got there, but it's just an operational mess behind the scenes or something like this. And you got to really surface those challenges and the organization's looking for the solutions to solve them as well and
Yeah.
positioning yourself with those.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And a lot of times like making the assumption that somebody else is going to be fixing,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
we had a lot of that, which is like, one team thought that another team should be the one to fix it. And like a lot of these things end up just in no one do,
Right.
taking them on. So that's one of the things I love about customer marketing is like you can say, oh, hey, I'll go fix that. I'll go work.
Right.
And like almost anything that touches customer can be within your scope.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, Kristen, a couple closing questions here. First, what's a misconception of customer marketing that you've seen, felt, or experienced in your career?
I mean, I think like the relegation of customer marketing as just like case studies and
Yeah,
references. Like I operate under the principle that like customer marketing can and marketers can do so much. Like if they put themselves at the seat of I'm the subject matter expert of how customers use our product, what their stories are, who the people are. You can aim that at literally anything within a business. So you can kind of almost take on anything. So I don't like I think that is really like kind of unfortunate is like when it's just pigeonholed into like specific deliverables.
Yeah, yeah, could not agree more there. Any final advice, whether it's career advice, campaign, whatever,
Oh,
role
yeah.
advice, growing their anyone on the session here or listening in on demand world after the fact on growing their career through customer marketing?
Um, I mean, that's tough. I think like staying curious is the best thing that you can possibly do is just stay curious about what everybody else is doing because then you can always look for the opportunities to connect back. How a customer would or customer marketing can contribute back to that. So I think just like general career advice is just like staying super, super curious about what other people and other teams are doing, which can get really hard when like everybody's so busy in meetings kind of constantly, and you don't always make the time or the space to actually do it.
Yeah, yep. If anybody has follow-up questions, wants to chat, or just wants to shoot you a message, what is the best medium for them to be able to chat or reach you after this?
Yeah, I mean, if they're not sick of me already, like kudos to stayed on for like 50 minutes. Thank you. Um, DM, like I would love to connect with everybody on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. Like I really love like in like the advocate sense, like I'm not the brand, like the in front brand builder. Like I just love to have these conversations. So I am more than willing and open if anybody wants to talk to, and I'd love to learn from other people too.
Fantastic. Kristen, thanks so much for joining. Thanks for being number one here as well. And please stay tuned for future versions, and we'll send out a calendar and start organizing a schedule for future sessions and topics as well. And if you have thoughts on this format, the series, we want to keep this really iterative. We're going to do this over a long period of time. Thoughts on great topics, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm in the CMA. Thank you to Mary as well. I almost forgot to say, Mary, thank you for being the medium and hosting this and all the promotional help as well behind this. Feel free to reach out to any of us for new ideas as well as we keep going.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
You
Kristen.
too. Bye.